So, Brett, how you doing?
I'm good, Hector. Thank you. Doing very well.
Uh, well, we're sorry that you couldn't be with us live, but I know you have some issues right now, and we're really thankful for your time.
Well, thank you for at least asking me, and I'm sorry I couldn't make it. We're going to try to show up, even though it's late, a few days later, and at least get to meet some people, play a little golf, see the city, and I hope to be back in the years to come. I know it's the first event, but I know it's also a big event, and I wanted to be a part of it somehow, some way. It had some medical issues that I've been dealing with, and I just couldn't get out of a doctor's appointment that I had to be there for.
All right. No, we're really thankful that you're still considering having us and being with us. And as you know, Descúbrete más is this event that we're trying to share our stories with the audience so they can relate and find inspiration. And I wanted to start this conversation by asking you, I have a pretty good recollection that after your dad passed away, you decided to go play.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for people who follow NFL football, I think most know the story. Somewhere around early 2000s, my father passed away 2 days before we were playing. We were actually in Oakland to play the Oakland Raiders when I got the news, and there were 16 games in the schedule, regular season schedule, and it was the 15th game, so it was the second to the last game. We needed to win both games to make the playoffs, and there still wasn't a guarantee. We had to win those two games, and we needed help with another team losing. So I say that because it was a very important game. And got the news that my father had passed away. The game was on a Monday night football. We were in Oakland on Saturday afternoons when I got the news. And as you can imagine, it was overwhelming. You know, it was a lot to take in, and it didn't really register. I knew it was real, but it didn't seem real. My wife, Deanna, ended up flying out late that night because this was 3 days before Christmas. So a lot's going on. We have two daughters who were young at the time. So they were in Green Bay. When we got the news, Deanna flew out to be with me, and the girls stayed with some friends of ours. And it was never a moment of contemplating whether I would play or not. You know, I think there was a lot of talk of will he or won't he play. That was never an issue. The issue for me was, this is, in my mind, the last opportunity that I will have to honor my father. This is his going out, song, so to speak. So the pressure was enormous that I had placed upon myself to play a game that I'd played for so long, but to play it better in this game that I've ever played in all the years in games combined. And so we never really talked football in a sense of like the strategy of the Oakland game. That was kind of blown out of the water. And coaches generally don't like that. They like to stay in their zone and focus on the game at hand and no distractions. Well, this was totally obliterated how coaches and organizations work. I mean, we had players coming in and out of our room, coaches coming in and out. We talked, we cried, we laughed, we prayed. We would do it all over again. You know, it was just a cycle. And as you can imagine, I got the news Saturday afternoon. The game was on Monday night, so I had what seemed like an eternity before that game was to start. I couldn't wait for the game to get there because the pressure was so enormous for me to play a game that I'd never played before, meaning the best that I'd ever, I didn't want to just play just to play. I wanted to play and win the game because we needed to, and play better than I've ever played before. That was putting just an enormous amount of pressure on me. And I knew the whole world was watching. Will he play? Won't he play? If he does play, will he be of any help, or will he hurt the team? All those things. And then finally the game, was underway, and really it was kind of like, you hear boxers talk about once I got punched the first time, I was okay. Like the butterflies are gone. Now we're in it. Now we're fighting. That's kind of the way it was once the game started.
What were your best performances during your career?
May be the best. You know what's crazy about that? At halftime, halfway, just halfway into the game, I had better stats in 2 quarters of football than I'd had in 4 quarters in any game up to that point. That's pretty amazing. That's the God thing.
Yeah, you said something very important about honoring your father. I think that's legacy. That's something that has to be installed in young people.
Correct.
Well, I want to ask you, what do you believe will be your motivation to have such a long career? Why go for so long?
That's a great question. And I've had that question and many times over the years, like, did you know you wanted to play 20? Or what made you play 20? Or how did you come to the fact that, did you wake up one day and go, wow, this is 18 years. I mean, 2 more and I'll make 20. The thing with me, and I think this is important for anyone listening to this, watching, whatever it is you choose to do in life, it's okay to set goals, but I don't think that I just don't, for me, it wouldn't have been good for me to say, and I guess the best way to explain it is I would see guys come and go each year, new players, high expectations, and next thing I know, they were gone. Then there was guys that flew under the radar that lasted a long time. And to me, the ones that didn't last very long were the ones that you would hear them say in a conversation, maybe with you or with other people. Yeah, I'm going to play 5 years and make my money and I'm going to get out. Or I'm going to play 10 and and then I'm done. When you start trying to dictate, at least in sports, how long you're going to play, there's a lot of factors that go into you being on the team year in and year out. Heck, for that matter, week in and week out. Performance, injuries, health. You have no injuries. Maybe you're healthy, but you just can't play like you did 5 years ago. And teams move on. So they always took the perspective of, I'm going to play as long as I can play and as long as I like it. And, if my body holds up, I'm enjoying my teammates, I'm enjoying the competition, I'll just keep playing. And the next thing I knew, it was like year 18, and I was like, man, how did I get this far? And then lo and behold, I played 2 more to close it out at 20. But, is there a number that's too much or is there a number that's too little? No, I think it all comes down to the individual. Do you love playing the game? Do you love going to work? Because, there's people listening to this and maybe you have a good job that you enjoy doing, but one day, and this is what I would tell people. If I wake up one day and I'm driving into the facility and I'm like, I just don't feel like doing it today. I don't have it in me. I don't feel like practicing. Then the writing is on the wall. And I think that it's that the beginning of the end is starting to set in on you. And when you start looking at like something, I grew up, I wanted to play pro baseball or pro football. And that was it. There was no plan C. If I wouldn't have had the opportunity to play either, I don't know what I would have done. But to me, it was a sport. I loved to play. I just enjoyed the practice. Can't say I enjoyed the running and working out and all that all the time. That was something you had to do. But there came a point about year 19 where I could sense that it was more work than it was play, if that makes sense. So, yeah, at that point I was nearing the end anyway. I mean, year 19, I'm just almost 40 years old. And so I was beat up, but I'm thankful for the 20 years I had. Very thankful.
Well, we all are. We enjoy watching you for those 20 years. You were talking about being young. How was Brett as a kid? How did Brett grow up?
I wouldn't say a troublemaker. I was into everything. And I was first and foremost, I was in sports. I was playing baseball. If I wasn't playing baseball, I was playing football. I tried basketball, wasn't very good, but I was always playing something. I got an older brother, a younger sister, and we were always out in the yard competing, 2-on-2, 3-on-1, whatever. And there wasn't a whole lot of time for anything else. I mean, we were rambunctious. We were always playing. It was storming outside or there was a hurricane and we couldn't be inside. We would make up a game, and play. We would break windows. We would break lamps. We would tear up furniture. We were a handful. But I think, and another thing that surprises people, my mother and father were both school teachers. In 12 years, I never missed a day of school. So I had perfect attendance. And to me, that relates to how I never missed a game in football. I can't say I was a great student, but I did enough to get by. I was smart enough, which just sounds weird. I was smart enough to get by and good enough to get a scholarship and go play college ball and all that stuff. But why not just kill it in your academics? Well, I'd rather been out on the schoolyard playing kickball or softball or baseball or football than doing schoolwork. I knew I had to do schoolwork to get me to where I wanted to go. And so I did enough to get by, but I never missed a day of school. I didn't want to miss. I didn't particularly like it, but I always wanted to be there in person.
Well, you have such an interesting life. You have many years ahead of you, but when you look back, how would you define success?
I've had this conversation with a lot of people, including my two daughters, that I think the misconception about success, if you were to just go in and ask a 12, 15-year-old boy or girl, what is your definition of success? I would be shocked that they didn't say someone with a lot of money. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. As we know, as you get older, you realize you can have all the money in the world and be the most miserable person around. Success to me is about doing something that you love to do or that you wanted to do and doing it the best that you possibly can. That's succeeding in your goal or your life achievement. For me was to be an athlete and be a best athlete. That's what I dreamed of. Now, as a kid, I didn't dream about how much money they paid. I didn't even think about that. Nor did I dream about playing in Pro Bowls and Super Bowls. And did I want to play in a Super Bowl? Yeah, but I wanted to play professional football. That was it. And I wanted to be the best. And I could say that I achieved that. So you don't have to be a singer. You don't have to be a football player. You don't have to be a soccer player. You can be a teacher and a very successful one. Again, all the money in the world does not make you successful, nor does it make you happy.
We can agree on that. I think wealth should be defined in so much other areas other than just
Right.
money. We talk about that game in Oakland. During your career, you're a guy that has 3 MVPs. You won a Super Bowl. Is there a moment special that you can think that it feels to you like the most rewarding moment?
That's a good question, Hector. I think playing in the Super Bowl, first of all, is kind of the pinnacle of a team success. Final Four in college basketball, the World's College Baseball, the World Series, that's the ultimate team goal. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of that, and we won one. But I think individually, and I never really thought about it this way, but I would think the first time I became a starter was when it dawned on me that I've made it, I've arrived. Now, will I stay? Is another story. That remains to be seen. Well, I did stay. But, it's kind of like this huge sigh of relief that I had privately. Like, I finally got my opportunity. This is what I've always dreamed of. Now, and the next thought or comment to myself was, don't let it get away. So I think individually, to get my first start was kind of a welcoming me into the fraternity, so to speak. But from a game perspective, I think the Oakland game was one of those games that will be forever etched in people's minds and will be talked about long afterward. And to me, I wish the circumstances were different. I wish my dad was back and that we didn't have to be having this conversation. That it was just another game, but that's not the case. And so at least it keeps the flame alive in talking about my father and knowing the circumstances and the enormous amount of pressure I've placed upon myself. And I prayed, I was like, Jesus, if there was ever a time I needed some help, I need to play this game better than I've ever played to honor my father. And there's no question at halftime, when I was walking in the locker room, I was like, thank you, God. Because I could have walked to the parking lot, got on the bus and went home and had better stats than I've ever had. I mean, think about that.
Life is made up of up and downs. You got drafted by Atlanta, right? Didn't play, got traded. What was going through your mind as you sat on the bench all that time?
Yeah.
Did you think about quitting? Did you think about, I made it to an NFL team. This is pretty much enough?
No, I remember that year, even though it was a long time ago, 1991, I didn't play. I'd been used to playing, being a starter. I was just a guy. Some of the guys on the team knew my name, some didn't. I had no role. I wasn't doing anything. I was on the team. And I never thought about quitting, but I thought, I don't like this. I want to be on the team. I'm thankful I'm on the team, but I want to contribute. And I didn't see any daylight at the end of the tunnel had I stayed there. Not anytime soon. Did I think I would be traded at the end of that year? Absolutely not. That was a true blessing in itself because I didn't play my first year. Think about it. I got drafted in the second round. I don't play. Then I get traded for a first round pick. So it's like I re-entered the draft for no reason and went in the first round rather than the second for no reason. I didn't do anything to better myself. I just sat on the bench. So I knew I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I knew right then and there, this is an opportunity that will never come again. So I better seize the moment.
You got into Green Bay and you weren't a starter.
First two games I did not start, correct.
You get called up to the first team, and this is when you say, well, this is my shot.
That's exactly what I said. I had 0 reps with the first team. So, and that's no excuse because I'm not the only person that never gets reps with the first team. You just have to, they always say, be ready. Your time will come. Tomorrow, 6 weeks from now, maybe 3 years from now, but your time will come. What will you do with it when it comes? Well, it came sooner for me. And I remember they were like, grab your helmet. And I was nervous, but in a good way, because I knew this is what I've been waiting for. And I didn't know how I was going to get it done because a lot of the offensive plays and the terminology, the reps would, I didn't have any of that. So it's like kind of going into something blind and feel way through. But I knew that if I was going down, I went down swinging.
You get thrown out and suddenly you're in the position of leadership right away with no experience. How do you go about changing the expectations of the team of having a new leader and leading them? I think that was that season, and the season after that, you went and played the Super Bowl, right?
3 years after. We went to the playoffs the first year, which had not done in 25 years. So
how do you embrace that responsibility?
When I went to Southern Miss in college, when I got into play was very similar to how I got into play in Green Bay. We were down about 17-3. It was the second half. The guy in front of me in Green Bay got hurt, but at Southern Miss, the guy in front of me just wasn't playing very well. But they said, "Hey, go in, bring us back. Let's win this game." Well, that was my personality. First of all, my personality, I like to ease the tension or the team or the huddle with I don't want to say laughter, but by being loose. Just kind of keeping guys. I think you play better when you're loose and you just kind of, when you're tense and nervous, you tend to play that way. So I got in the huddle. I'm 22 years old, and I said, "Hey, we're going down to score." And one of the old offensive linemen was like 35 years old. Was like, "Hey, shut the F up and call the play." And I'm like, that was kind of my indoctrination into, shut up with the Mickey Mouse stuff and just play. And all of a sudden we'd go right down the field and we score. And I think everyone maybe didn't believe before. I gave the impression that I believed, but I did. I thought, what's the big deal? We'll just go down and score. Well, everyone else is like, this guy's full of hot air. He don't know what he's talking about. He's just a young pup But by the end of that game, I had all the old guys and the young guys ready to go to war with me. If we'd had to go to war right then, they were right.
It sounds amazing, but it sounds like you were built to be there. As you were up, which will be the most significant person in your life that impacted you the most and helped you shape this kind of mentality?
Yeah, I tell people all the time that my dad he was my football and my baseball coach all the way throughout growing up. And he taught me very little about the technical parts of the game, like throwing and reading defenses and, understanding how plays are called versus deep schemes and things like that. What he taught me was, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Karate Kid.
Yep.
Mr. Miyagi. He's teaching the young kid. The kid wants to learn to fight. He's like, Mr. Miyagi, when do we learn to fight? When do you teach me to punch or kick? And he says, first you paint the fence. Well, the whole time, what Daniel's son didn't know was he was prepping him for that time. This is all going to kind of come full circle at some point. And that was the way my dad, why was I having to do tackle and blocking drills and around doing monkey roll drills and all this stuff? I wanted to throw and touchdowns and make dramatic plays, hot stuff. But my dad was like, you'll do what the rest of the team does. Or if you don't like it, you just go on home. You don't have to play. And the other aspect of it was the toughness part of it. So he told me as far back as I can remember, he said, look, let me just tell you something right now. If you ever lay on the field, don't expect me to come out there and get you up. And your mama ain't coming out of the bleachers and she's not getting you up. Now you better get your butt up because the team's counting on you. Get back in huddle and call the next play. And I never missed a game. I went 19 years without missing a game. And I think the leadership and the toughness were instilled in me at an early age, and not directly, not like, okay, you have to be tough. I would say it's important for the team to know that you're willing to do what they do and then some, and that, if not more than they're willing to do, because they're going to look to you for leadership at some point. They're not going to look to you for leadership if you're skipping practice or showing up late or not doing the things that they do. They're not going to follow you. And he's absolutely 100% right.
Yeah. Leaders eat last.
Yeah. Very, very, very well said.
It blows my mind having a 20-year career. And then by the end of that career, you decide to go and make a move and go play for the Vikings, which at the time, how do you come to that decision? I mean, you've probably been asked this a bunch of times, but sometimes in life, you have to take decisions that they don't seem to be what all other people want you to. You have to go through your gut with your gut, with your feelings.
Yeah, so I played my first year in Atlanta. I get traded to Green Bay. I played 16 years in Green Bay. We win a Super Bowl. We lose the Super Bowl. I have some fantastic years. But the best year, statistically speaking, as a Packer was my 16th year. Played outstanding. We almost went to the Super Bowl again. After that season, we lose the championship game. The management for the Packers didn't necessarily want me to leave, but they didn't necessarily want me to come back, if that makes sense. And I sensed it. I went home after the season, and I told our head coach, look, give me a couple months. I was just so, we were a play away from being in the Super Bowl yet again. And I just didn't want to think about football for the first couple of months where they called and answered. And finally, at the time, I was like, if you're asking for a commitment to come back and play right now, This is like April. I said, I can't make that commitment. I'm just not right now. I don't want to think about football. And they took it as a retirement. They're like, okay, so we're going to set a retirement press conference up here tomorrow. We'll have a plane down to pick you up. I mean, it was that fast. And me and Deanna, we go to the press conference. I get all upset, and I think part of the reason I was upset was I didn't know if I was making the right decision, retiring. At that particular time, that day, did I want to play football? No. But come 2 months later, 3 months later, training camp, would I want to go play? More than likely, yeah. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I retired and I started getting the itch and thinking about it. But I was like, I know they don't want me to go back there and play, the management. So how can I go back and play for a team that doesn't want me? Not the players, the management. Meanwhile, one of my dear friends was the offensive coordinator. He called the plays for the Minnesota Vikings. His name's Darryl Bevel, a great guy. He would always be, man, come play with us, kind of joking, like, well, now that you're retired, you can come play with us. And I was like, oh, that would be nice. He said, do you have the itch to play? I said, yeah, I got the itch to play. But I mean, if I unretire, I'm going to look like a goofball and, a jackass. And well, about end of May or June, one of my old friends that was a teammate and also now had become one of the coaches for the Packers comes here to my home in Hattiesburg and visits me. His wife lives in New Orleans, or is from New Orleans, so they were visiting family. He drove up, and we rode around and talked football, talked life. And he said, do you miss it? And I said, you talking about football? And he goes, yeah. I go, well, it's off season still, so not really. But as we get closer to the training camp starting, I do miss it. I kind of get the itch. So he said, you mind if I tell Mike McCarthy, our head coach? I said, no, don't mind. So he went back and told him, and that stirred up a hornet's nest. And there was some harsh words said on both sides. And ultimately, they traded me to the Jets. I can't say that there was two teams, according to the Packers, that wanted me, the Jets and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were willing to make a trade for me. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's what they said. So I had decided I would go to the Buccaneers, but I said, give me till tonight before we make a move one way or the other. Well, between that time and tonight, they traded me to the Jets. And I felt like that they did that because they felt like I would be lost forever. The Jets had struggled for a long time. They didn't play the Jets. Totally different conference. So I would just fade away. And as that season got underway and progressed into the latter part of the season, I felt like that they had won, if that makes sense. Like the Packers had shipped me off to nowhere land, and I tore my bicep midway through the season. I was making bad throws. I was hurt. If I ever wanted to play football again, I had to have surgery on my bicep. So there was a lot of things to think about. I'm 39 years old, and I go home. The Jets wanted me to come back. I told them I didn't feel like I had it in me to come back there. So they cut me loose, gave me a free pass. I had bicep surgery, and lo and behold, the Vikings give me a shot. And I'll be honest with you, when I committed to play with the Vikings, I wasn't entirely sure I was all in. But a big part of me wanted to come back to play against the Packers and to prove that I still could play. I felt like I had a vendetta to get over, because I felt like they thought I wasn't enough to play for them anymore. That I was a has-been. And so once I made that commitment to go to the Vikings, I knew I had to be all in, and I was, and I had a blast. We came a play away from the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I clearly remember that. As I to you, I can get a sense that you take a lot of decisions, big decisions. After you win a Bowl, become an MVP, they say it's lonely at the top. How do you get a support system around you to help you make these decisions? Do you have to go all by yourself? Do you have a couple of people that you get close, that you're close to, that you can talk to?
Yes, on all the above. My wife's been an instrumental part of in my success. And it's not that she's hasn't had her share of adversity. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, advanced breast cancer at an early age, early 30s. And that was a couple of days apart from her losing her brother in a tragic ATV accident out here on our property. But we grew up together. We grew up together. She was a year ahead of me in grade school. We started dating, or whatever you want to call it, when I was in the 9th grade. She was in the 10th. We knew each other long before that, so we knew each other way back. I mean, she knew me well before my first touchdown pass, and that doesn't matter to her. How many touchdowns I've thrown, how many yards, how many wins, absolutely means nothing to her. So I've always relied on her for, she seems to have a clearer head and, a more solid head on her shoulders than I. And some other family members, and my agent, Bus Cook, was also another instrumental person in my decision making. And getting back to what you said, when you have a lot of success, it can be lonely at the top. No different than being lonely after retirement. If you don't have something to fall back on, family, a hobby. For me, when I retired for good, I had daughters that were still playing high school volleyball and basketball, and I loved going to the games. I was one of those dads, all in, but I wasn't yelling and screaming. I was supporting them 100%. And I had stuff to do on my property. I enjoyed, not necessarily farming, but just doing stuff, making my property look nice and being proud of that. And that gave me something to do all the time. We started traveling, which we never did prior to retiring. We kind of made this deal, Deanna and I. She's like, while we can still do it, let's travel, see the world, go places. So, the two are very similar. If you don't have something or somebody to fall back on, to lean on, you will be lonely. And I can't tell you how many times I've come across players that I played with or against that are retired like myself, and I haven't seen them in many years. I say, how you doing? Man, I miss structure. And I go, you miss structure? Well, how so? I miss having to be somewhere at a certain time. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I miss, structure of being somewhere, having a practice, having a schedule, and being expected to be on that schedule. I got a lot of free time, and I don't know what to do with it. I hear that so many times. It's sad.
I was about to say that's sad because a lot of people struggle with mental health issues after that. You had your own. You've been open about it. You've been open about talking about a few more beers than you should back in the day.
Too many beers, too many pain pills. Yeah, 1996, which is the 96 year was when we won a Super Bowl. But the summer before that season, I went to rehab for pain pills. Spent 73 days in a row in Topeka, Kansas, at a rehab facility. I was bad. I really was bad pain pills. I was taking 16 Vicodin ES at one time, all one time. And I would pull them out of my vomit, put them back in my mouth. I mean, that's how bad it was. And it had a strong hold on me. And there was a lot of praying involved in that, because people that have been through it like myself know that we do not have the power to beat addiction. Only a higher power can beat addiction. And believe me, I thought for a long time I had a check. I knew what I was doing. I know what I'm doing. I would tell people, I know what I'm doing. And then it spiraled out of control to a point where I had 2 seizures that almost killed me. One was the day before we're playing one of our games in the 95 season. So, I mean, there was a lot of close calls. To come out of that, never taken a pain pill since. In 1998, I went back to that same rehab facility for alcohol. And since then, I've never had a drink since 1998.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And that's a Jesus Christ thing.
Like it's high power. And I think we thank you. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much you have.
Everybody's going to face adversity.
Adversity is going to come up is what are you going to do with it when it comes up, right? And you had an amazing career, and now you're using your time to do. I mean, you talk about this. This is not the first time you talk about battling with addiction and coming at a mental health issue, and I think that's remarkable. People really thank you for being an inspiration for everyone, including myself. I really, really, really admire you. Brett, we appreciate your time. We don't want to take that much more of your time. If you could go back and talk to yourself, to that kid in the picture. I just saw recently a picture of the guy drafted. You remember?
Oh yeah,
That famous picture that I don't know, some other player,
Baker Mayfield made
Baker
up.
Mayfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
He what would you tell that kid?
I've thought about this so many times, and I cringe when I see that picture or old interviews that I did, and I go, yeah. And when I cringe, I go, oh, what was I thinking? Look how bad I sound, how cocky I was. Or I think what I would say, because it worked out, obviously, but what I would say and I can't even recall off the head times where maybe I was rude to someone, or what's the word? Just kind and thoughtful. It doesn't mean you have to have a conversation with everybody that comes up to you, but there's a way to be nice and respectful and polite. And again, I'm not saying this because I was a bad person. I'm never going to say I was a good person. Only other people can say that about me. But I would say that at an early age, and I'm probably not the first one to say this or feel this, you don't have time to be considerate and thoughtful and kind and polite, when really you have plenty of time. There's always time to be a good person, in my opinion. There's no place in being rude. It's just uncalled for. And, I would go back and tell my other self, look, you got a bright future ahead of you. Trust me, I've seen the future. You got a bright future. But I want you to think about something from day one. I want you to, every person that you encounter, maybe for a minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or even just in passing, you make it a point to be a thoughtful person to them. If they say hello, good morning, you say the same thing. Don't roll your eyes and say, what's her problem? Or what, just always be considerate of others. And then at the end of your career, you'll see what I'm talking about. And what I would mean by that is you had all this great and wonderful things happen to you, but you were extremely nice and polite and thoughtful and considerate to everybody that you came across. And God will smile heavily on you for that. I just think that that's important for anyone, but specifically ladies, and holding the door open and saying please and thank you and yes ma'am, and being a good person. That's what I would say. I would say that really to any kid.
Just to finish, the name of the event, let me tell you a little story. Descúbrete in Spanish has two meanings. One meaning is find yourself, discover yourself. And the other is like, if you take off your clothes, you'll be, descúbrete is taking off that you've been carrying for a long time. When we came up with the idea, it was giving people tools to find themselves and not let the past define the future.
I got my wife, sorry to cut you off, Hector,
Yeah.
but my wife has a great saying that she used to say to me after a bad game, after a bad year, or after terrible adversity. Look at life through the front windshield rather than the rear view mirror. You can drive a lot safer when you're looking out the front windshield and looking in the rear, going forward, looking through the rear view mirror. And it's so true. Living life, but dealing with the past all the time is no good for no one. So I like that theme. I like that theme because it's so true. You got to move on.
What just finished? What's Brett now? After all this, what have you discovered of yourself? What's the most treasure thing you have inside. What's the secret sauce that you could
Well,
say led you to life? Because
humility is one. Humility. And when I was prepping for my Hall of Fame speech, which was a huge event, I don't know how many people watched. I knew that this was my last time to get up and speak about my career in a way that I could honor the coaches and players I played with, and just so I wanted to hit a home run, so to speak. And I remember looking up different words that I could use, and I remember looking up humility, and I'd heard humility mentioned a lot, but I really didn't know what it meant. And I really kind of dove into that word, and I said, that's me. You know, as much as I want to think that my success is because of me, I'm full of, you know what, you know, my success is because of my teammates. My success is because of my coaches. My success is because of my wife, my parents, and certainly Jesus Christ. Because there's many times I could have died, failed, never was heard of again. Why did I overcome all those things and rise to the occasion? Again, it wasn't because of me. It was because of the factors that I just mentioned, most importantly, Jesus Christ.
faith.
You know, so when I look back at my career and where I am now, one thing I've learned, I'm not as tough as I once was. My body is breaking. I didn't think it was for a long time. So things have started to shoot their ugly head, if you will. And it sucks, but you know, if I had it to do all over again, I probably would do it the same way, just because that was me. Maybe made a few decisions different, maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to say. The only way you would ever know is if you could go back, and we know that that's not true. So I had a wonderful career. I'm very thankful for the success that I was able to be a part of. I say part of, not that I was able to accumulate myself. And just very blessed. I got a wonderful family, 3 great grandkids who, you know, are just awesome kids, way more awesome than I was. So I got a lot to be thankful for.
Well, and we're thankful to having you. And you know, we're really, really thankful to have you. I know we'll see you in a couple of days. A lot of people will be very happy to just shake your hand
Me too.
and look at you and quick word. And thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon, man.
Okay, Hector. See you in a few days.
Thank you.
Yep. That was great. That was easy.